Hey, welcome back to Crime Time 911. Men were vanishing from Toronto's Church-Wellesley Village, quietly without a trace. They were missed by friends, mourned by communities, but their cases went unsolved year after year. Behind the disappearances was a man no one suspected, a landscaper, a mall Santa, a familiar face hiding a chilling secret. Bruce McArthur wasn't just blending in, he was getting away with unspeakable acts. This is the story of deception, overlooked warnings, and the predator who hid in plain sight. This is the case that changed Toronto forever. Thomas Donald Bruce McArthur was born on October 8, 1951 in Lindsay, Ontario. He was raised on a farm in Argyll, which is in the Kawartha Lakes region. So my husband and I are very familiar with this area. My husband grew up in Lindsay, and we lived in Orillia for over 10 years, which isn't too far from Lindsay and the Kawartha Lakes region. So this is definitely an area that we are very, very familiar with. Bruce also had a sister, as well as his parents fostered troubled kids from Toronto. Often they had 6 to 10 children in their care at any given time. Bruce's parents had a good reputation within the area. His parents were both dedicated to their religions. His mother was Irish Catholic, while his father was Scottish Presbyterian. Their devotion to their religions often sparked arguments based around this, in which Bruce would often take his mother's side, which led to ridicule from his father. Bruce also suspected that his father sensed that he was gay. Bruce struggled with accepting his orientation, especially because being gay was considered abnormal at that time, especially in rural Ontario. Bruce did not fit in with others in primary school. He was later bused to Fenland Falls Secondary School, where he met and began to date his future wife, Janice Campbell. They would graduate in 1970. Bruce would then take a program in general business that he would graduate from. He and Janice would marry when they were 23 years old. Sometime in 1973, Bruce started working at an Eaton's department store in downtown Toronto as a buyer's assistant. In the mid-70s, Bruce's father was diagnosed with a brain tumor and was sent to a nursing home as a result. His mother became interested in another man at this time, which disappointed Bruce. As a result, Bruce ended up growing closer to his father. It didn't sound like Bruce's father was the best husband or father for that matter, but for his mother to move on to a new man when her husband is deathly ill is absolutely crazy to me. Like, I get it that, maybe they had already been starting to, become estranged, but I don't know. I couldn't imagine just abandoning somebody who was literally on their deathbed. Bruce's mother ended up passing in 1978, and his father passed in 1981. In 1978, Bruce would leave Eaton's and began working as a traveling salesman for McGregor Socks. He would go to department stores and try to get them to carry his merchandise. He would later work as a merchandising representative for Stanfield's, which is a garment company. In 1979, Bruce and Janice moved into a house on Ormond Drive in Oshawa, and in 1981, they had a daughter and a son, Melanie and Todd. I was not able to confirm if his children were twins or not, and I could only confirm that they were both potentially born in 1981. So I don't know if one was born in January and the other one was born towards the end of 1981, or if they were twins. So if you know more about this particular part, definitely leave it in the comments, because I'm for sure curious to know whether or not they're twins. In 1986, Bruce and Janice purchased a home on Cartreff Avenue in Oshawa. To keep his mind off of his true feelings brewing inside, Bruce becomes more involved in his church. By the early 1990s, Bruce would begin having affairs with men. He eventually confessed his orientation to his wife, and they continued to live together. In 1993, Bruce's job in the clothing industry ended. The family ended up with financial difficulties. One reason for their financial stress is due to Todd, who was a teen at the time. He had been prosecuted for making obscene phone calls to women, and the legal fees were contributing to the family's financial stress. They would end up declaring bankruptcy in 1999. Bruce had separated from Janice in 1997 and moved to Toronto as the gay community in Oshawa was extremely small at that time. Bruce started to frequent Toronto's gay village, going to the bars of Church-Wellesley, and moved into an apartment on Don Mills Road. He was also pursuing a 4-year relationship with a man. As Bruce's divorce was being finalized, his relationship with this man ended. This was when Bruce started seeing a psychiatrist and was prescribed medication that he took for several months. It was around this time that he began his career as a landscaper. So I find it very interesting that he went from a career as a merchandiser and a salesman to a landscaper. Those are two very different career paths. It makes me wonder if he decided to become a landscaper as the first step in the horrific acts that he would end up later committing, or if he just wanted to try something new at the time. I'm sure we will probably never know. On October 31st, 2001, just after 12 p.m., actor and model Mark Henderson invited Bruce to his apartment to see his Halloween costume. While inside, Bruce would end up behind Mark and bludgeon him with an iron pipe that he often carried. Mark would fight back until he lost consciousness. So my question here is, why would Bruce often carry around an iron pipe? I feel like he was just waiting for an opportunity to carry out his disturbing thoughts that he was having. Although it can be argued that maybe he carried the pipe around for personal protection, but I'm not 100% convinced about that. When Mark regained consciousness, he called 911. He was then taken to St. Michael's Hospital. He received several stitches in his head and fingers and had to do 6 weeks of physiotherapy. Bruce would later turn himself in, and he claimed that he had no memory of the incident. He pled guilty to assault with a weapon, assault causing bodily harm, and got a conditional sentence of 729 days on April 11th, 2003. So for those of you who don't know, a conditional sentence of imprisonment is a sentence where an offender serves their jail time in the community instead of a correctional facility, provided they meet certain conditions. It is often referred to as house arrest and requires the offender to comply with specific conditions set by the court, such as curfews, restrictions on movement, or mandatory treatment programs. Violating these conditions can result in the offender being sent to jail to serve the remaining portion of their sentence. So despite the fact that he sent a man to the hospital, caused so much damage that this poor guy had to attend physiotherapy for 6 weeks, and he basically got a slap on the wrist and was able to pretty much walk free for the most part. No wonder people like Bruce often reoffend. The Crown had initially believed that Bruce should receive jail time. However, after psychiatric and pre-sentencing reports suggest that Bruce was a low risk to reoffend, they agreed to the conditional sentencing. So I wonder if years down the road, the Crown was kicking themselves in the ass once they found out what he ended up doing later on. It was also thought that Bruce's actions may have been related to the combination of anti-seizure medication and a muscle relaxant, which is sometimes taken recreationally before engaging in intimate acts. Poor Mark was so traumatized by the attack that he did not provide a victim impact statement at Bruce's sentencing. Bruce spent the first year of his sentence under house arrest, then a 6-month curfew, and 3 years of probation. As he carried out his sentence, he was banned from church in Wellesley with the exception of work and medical appointments. He also had to stay at least 33 feet from Mark's workplace and home. He was also not allowed to engage with men of the night. Bruce was also forbidden to possess certain tools that police carry for 10 years as well, as he was not to purchase, possess, or consume any sort of substances unless it was medically prescribed. In addition to all that, he also had to submit his DNA into a database and had to undergo psychological and psychiatric counseling, including anger management. Retired Toronto homicide detective David Perry stated in a news article that all of the conditions were next to impossible to enforce. The conditions aren't published or publicly available, and there was nowhere to go to see if someone was on a condition. The court imposes the conditions with hopes that the offender complies. However, generally speaking, the only way that they get caught not complying is when the police find out they are breaching their conditions in some way, or if they catch the attention of the police. So basically, as long as these offenders are laying low, they could be out there breaching their conditions left, right, and center. I would understand a conditional sentencing for a small petty crime like, thefts or maybe a small B&E or anything that did not cause physical harm to anybody. But outside of that, I think that the offenders should be put in jail or in prison, depending on the severity of the crime that they have committed. And in this case, where Bruce had physically assaulted somebody to the point of losing consciousness, having several stitches, and several weeks of physiotherapy, I feel like at least being put into jail for the, remainder of for his full sentence should have been something that was done. In 2002, when his DV case was still pending, Bruce would register with Recon, which is a gay fetish website for men that are into BDSM. His profile on the site declared his interest in submissive men. This was not the only dating website he was active on. He was also on sites like Silver Daddies, Man Jam, Daddy Hunt, Squirt, and Scruff, to name a few. In 2011, Bruce reestablished himself in Toronto's gay community and became a regular at gay bars. He would join Facebook, where he shared his nightlife with younger men of South Asian or Middle Eastern descent. Bruce's banishment from Church-Wellesley was well known, and he developed a reputation for BDSM and rough, intimate acts. He would tell an acquaintance, Robert James, about an incident where he was asked to leave a coffee house, and in turn, he reacted violently. After learning about Bruce's violent tendencies, Robert decided that he was going to stay away from Bruce. That was definitely a smart move on Robert's part, for sure. In 2014, Bruce would be granted a pardon on the 2003 conviction, and it was expunged from his record. This means any background checks run on Bruce after this would come up 100% clear, which is, I have no words about this. This whole case, I don't even know what these legal people were even thinking. This is so messed up. I'm lost for words, truly. Bruce's landscaping business was called Artistic Designs. A colleague who had installed water features on 3 of Bruce's projects stated that he remembered how there was always an older white man who was with Bruce. They appeared to be romantically involved, as well as there was a day laborer who was typically of the Southeastern, Asian, or Middle Eastern descent. Almost all of Bruce's clients of his landscaping business were elderly, wealthy women who found Bruce to be charming. He built his client base through personal recommendations. During the fall and winter months, Bruce worked as Santa Claus at a mall and made floral gifts for charities. So I wonder what parents were feeling once they realized that they had a picture of their child with Bruce dressed as Santa. Having your children get pictures with Santa is a memory most parents love to create. And now some have pictures of their children with a horrific serial unaliver. That would be so traumatic. Bruce's son Todd had trouble accepting his father's orientation. After Todd was released from jail for the obscene phone calls he had been making to women, he was ordered to live with his father. One of Todd's friends at the time had visited one night, and upon using the bathroom, he discovered that the wall of the bathroom had been decorated with naked Middle Eastern men. Todd would tell the friend that they were men that his father knew. Who decorates their bathroom with naked people, especially when you have children staying there? Todd was reportedly a teen at the time of his conviction, so I feel like it's highly inappropriate to have nude photos hanging around. Also, seems like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Even though Todd didn't physically harm anybody, the psychological impact he would have had on his victims could be just as damaging. Apologies if I mispronounce any names going forward. I will also use shortened names or nicknames when available to avoid severely mispronouncing anybody's names. In the early morning of September 6, 2010, Skanda, who was 40 at the time, had been seen leaving a gay bar called Zippers with an unknown male. Skanda was reported missing on September 10th or 11th, 2010. He met Bruce in 1999 and had been known to be romantically involved with him. He had also worked for Bruce's landscaping company. Skanda was a refugee from Sri Lanka and had no family members in Canada. Basir Faizi, 42, was last seen on December 28, 2010. He was leaving his workplace in Mississauga, and through banking records, it was determined that he went to Church-Wellesley. He stopped at the Black Eagle Bar and the Steamworks Bathhouse. Basir was an immigrant from Afghanistan. While he had been living in Iran, a friend would caution Basir about coming out as a gay man, telling him he should find God or leave. This conflict followed Basir, who was not out to his family. He worked overtime at work to ensure that his daughters got everything they wanted for Christmas. On December 29th, Basir was reported missing to the Peel Regional Police. His vehicle was found abandoned on Moore Avenue, close to the Beltline Trail, which is a small ravine that is popular amongst gay men. Majid Kayhan, 58, was last seen October 18, 2012, in Church-Wellesley near Yonge Street and Alexander Street. His adult son reported him missing on October 25th. Majid was also an immigrant from Afghanistan who had come to Canada with his wife and children in the late 80s. Majid and his wife would divorce in 2002, but as the son of a Muslim cleric, he did not come out to his entire family. Majid was a heavy drinker and had PTSD from the Soviet-Afghan War. He had also been active in the gay village since the mid-1990s and stayed in an apartment he kept by his partner, who also had not come out to his family. After Majid's partner's passing, he began to romantically pursue Bruce. In November 2012, police launched Project Houston to investigate the disappearances of Basir, Skanda, and Majid. However, in April 2014, they would close Project Houston, saying that none of their findings would identify anyone as a suspect. Soroush Mahmoudi, 50, was last seen on August 14, 2015, near his home on Markham Road and Blake Manor Boulevard. Soroush lived with his wife and worked in a manufacturing plant. He came to Canada as a refugee from Iran and did not have any family in Canada until he met his wife. They had moved from Barrie to Toronto to be closer to his wife's family. Despite his family and police not connecting him to the Toronto gay community, even though Soroush had a 4-year-old relationship with a transgender woman he had met in a bar on Church-Wellesley, his wife would report him missing sometime later that month. Dean Lizowick, who was either 43 or 44 at the time, had not been reported missing. He lived in the Toronto shelter system. Dean had occasionally stayed at the Scott Mission on Spadina Avenue since 2003. He was last recorded there on April 21, 2016. He struggled with many issues, including issues with substances. However, he was very respectful. Dean had previously worked as a man of the night. However, he had been trying to work more as a cleaner or a laborer. It's believed that he went missing sometime in April 2016. Salim Eason, 44, was last seen on March 20, 2017, near Yonge and Bloor Streets, which was just west of Church-Wellesley. Although there had been reports that he had been spotted around April 14th near Bloor Street and Ted Rogers Way. Salim was a Turkish national who first came to Canada to be with a partner he had met in Turkey. According to a friend, Salim struggled with substances and was trying to get control over his problem. He had completed a course in peer counseling from St. Stephen's Community House just before he disappeared. Even though police initially described Salim as being a man of no fixed address, a friend would dispute this, saying that he was in an unhealthy relationship and would sometimes stay with friends. Bruce was also a client of St. Stephen's Community House and was very trusted within that support group. Andrew Kinsman, 49, was last seen June 26, 2017, near his Winchester Street residence in Cabbagetown, south of Church-Wellesley. Andrew was known as a stable and responsible man. He was the superintendent of his building and a volunteer in the community. A friend who had last seen him stated that he was happy and upbeat. Andrew used to work as a bartender at the Black Eagle, and this is when he originally met Bruce. The two had known each other for at least a decade. He was known to have been in an intimate relationship with Bruce for a while. Andrew was reported missing on June 29th. In August 2017, police launched Project Prism to investigate the disappearances of Andrew and Salim. In September 2017, Project Prism officers identified Bruce as, quote, someone to be included or excluded as being involved in the disappearances of kinsmen. December 8th, Police Chief Mark Saunders advised that they will review the force's practices in missing persons investigations, stated that there was no evidence to suggest that there was a serial unaliver on the streets of Toronto. On January 17, 2018, evidence is discovered that suggested that Bruce was responsible for Salim and Andrew's unalivings, as well as other unidentified people. On January 18th, Bruce is arrested and charged with first degree in the cases of both Salim and Andrew. On January 29th, Bruce is charged with first degree in the cases of Majid, Sharouche, and Dean. This is when they identify Bruce as an alleged serial unaliver. February 8, 2018, police recovered the remains of 6 people from planters at a residence that Bruce had done landscaping work at. February 2nd, a 6th first-degree charge was laid against Bruce as they identified Sklad's remains in the planters. March 5th, police recovered the remains of a 7th person to be linked to Bruce. At this time, they did not know who the 7th victim was, and a picture of a man believed to be one of Bruce's victims was released in hopes that someone in the public could identify him. On April 11, 2018, police identified the 7th victim as Basir Faizi and lay a 7th charge against Bruce. On April 16th, an 8th victim was identified as Krishna Kumar, who was a Sri Lankan migrant who applied for refugee status after coming to Canada in 2010. In February 2019, Bruce was sentenced to life in prison. I had mentioned in a previous case that sometimes the perpetrators commit horrific crimes because they were unhappy with themselves, so they seek out others who they see themselves in and do horrific things such as unaliving them, physically hurting them, the list goes on. I feel like this might have been the case with Bruce. He grew up in a very religious family who likely wouldn't have accepted him if he had come out as gay. His own son struggled with accepting the fact that his own father was gay. Add in mental health issues, the everyday negativity that some members of the LGBTQ community face just for being themselves, as well as his 4-year relationship falling apart. Don't get me wrong, I am not making up excuses by any means. There are a lot of people out there who struggle daily with issues that don't go on to commit horrible crimes. Clearly, Bruce was a very unstable man, but putting all the other factors together, it seems like it brewed the perfect storm. As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow, like, and share this episode. It helps more people discover these stories and keeps the conversation going. Thanks for listening to Crime Time 911. Stay safe, stay curious, and remember to always trust your gut.